Welcome, everybody, to the Xavier Basketball Weekly Show. I am your host, Mike Goodpaster. Right now, I'd like to welcome in my co-host, legendary Xavier play-by-play man, Andy Macwilliams. How you doing, Andy?
Mike, I couldn't be better with the non-conference schedule in the rearview mirror and a rather difficult Big East opener on Monday for the Muskies playing at Villanova, but they might as well start at the top of the food chain, playing the Wildcats at the Pavilion.
Yeah, and Xavier is coming off what I thought was their most impressive game of the year with Najee Marshall, a little limited. They beat a really good TCU team at TCU 67-59 and offensively shot a little over 52%, only gave up 32% shooting. What were your big takeaways away from the win at TCU?
That was the first road game, the first road victory of the year after that bummer, if you will, at Wake Forest. They lost to the Demon Deacons in ACC country by a couple of points, but did not play very well. Just did not execute very well. That game was there for the taking, but Travis got them on the right page for Western Carolina, and the carryover. I thought they executed the game plan extremely well. They put the three-point shot in what I think is the proper context for Xavier. The Muskies only shot 15 of them, but they made 7, and very few, if any, forced three-point attempts in that game. And usually the three-point shot came after 4 or 5 or 6 passes, and a lot of them were, low to high, inside out, drive and dish threes. The three was in proper context, and they ran TCU off the three-point line. There's a team that maybe isn't as three-point dependent as some of the teams we'll see shortly in the Big East, like Creighton and Villanova and the teams of that ilk. But they shoot a lot of threes. They usually shoot a good percentage, and they did not against X. Let's see, TCU was 7 of 23, so Xavier much more efficient from 3. The only negative, the turnover total was way up above what Travis wants. So the Muskies turned it over 21 times. There weren't a lot of live ball turnovers, which usually result in transition buckets at the other end. So that was, I guess, a saving grace. But overall, I thought the Muskies played a really solid game. Tyreek Jones, 18 points, 12 rebounds, make that 14 rebounds, another double-double for him after a bit of a shaky performance at Wake. And Kiki Tandy was a bit of a wild card. I think Travis, he's so low on the scouting report, at least for TCU. I don't think he will be when it comes to Big East opponents, but Travis sort of saved him for the second half when the Muskies were wobbling a little bit. TCU got it down to maybe 12, 14 points, the Xavier lead, and Travis brought Kiki in and played him sort of off the ball, and he knocked down 2 long threes. Then he took the ball hard to the basket, scored, and missed the free throw, but he scored 8 points, sort of quicksilver off the bench, and that's what Xavier really needs to be. The bench has got to produce. Fremantle's been playing well. The big freshman from New Jersey, he was actually Big East Freshman of the Week, played very well against Western Carolina. Then again, he and Tyreek combined to have a terrific dominant post game at TCU. So, overall, I thought it was Xavier's best game of the year, other than maybe the shootout against UC, and I think sets them on a good path for the Villanova game Monday, the Big East opener in Philadelphia. X took about 3 days, three and a half full days off for Christmas, 4 good practices, and then traveled to Villanova on Sunday, and then play at 6:30 on FS1 on Monday. That's the first overall game in the Big East schedule. So a lot of positives. We'll see what develops. The Muskies have not fared very well in Philadelphia in the new Big East. They're 0-6 against Villanova. I think 0-5 at the Pavilion, which is the smallish, sort of crappy building on campus, and they lost last year to Villanova down at Wells Fargo because the Pavilion was under construction. They were trying to make a silk purse out of a sow's ear in that place. It's still garbage.
Yeah, and my biggest concern coming away from this, other than the 21 turnovers, was the free throw shooting. The 6 for 11 is scary. And then my final comment on this, though, is you talked about Tyreek Jones's double-double, 18 points, 3 steals, a block shot, 14 rebounds, and he only played 26 minutes.
Yeah, that's Travis's goal for Tyreek was to lead the Big East in rebounding this year and average a double-double, and he is just about there. And, the previous 2 games he had severe foul trouble. And this game, at least he got on the floor for 26, 27 minutes. And I think they're looking, Travis is still looking for a way to get Tyreek and Zach Freeman on the floor at the same time. Because that bigger lineup with Zach Hankins and Tyreek was one of the keys to the strong finish last year. And there's some huge teams in the Big East this year. Georgetown is gigantic with Yurtseven, the transfer from North Carolina State, and a couple of big freshmen. Who else is big? Seton Hall, when they're healthy, they're very big. And Marquette has gotten bigger. Creighton sort of runs a mini lineup. They're one big, but they shoot the damn three so much it doesn't make any difference. So yeah. I guess we'll see. On the road, I think Creighton's going to be real vulnerable. They only have Bishop, the sophomore big guy, and they have a transfer from Idaho. And if he is an impact player in the Big East coming from the Idaho Vandals, I will eat my computer. I mean,
now, the Idaho Vandals were good in the late 70s and early 80s.
Yeah, that was like 40 years ago. So, I mean, touche. I give you credit for knowing that.
They made it to the Elite Eight, didn't they? Or was that Idaho State? It might have been Idaho State in like 77 that made it to the Elite Eight, and I think they lost to UNLV by a point. But that just shows how old I am that I remember that. All right, so we're going to start off with Villanova. They started off the year. Ohio State blew them out. Since then, they've won 8 out of 9 games, including a win over number 1 ranked Kansas. They've scored 78 points in 8 straight games before the game against Kansas. Cole Swider and Sadiq Bey are both shooting better than 41% from the three-point line. Justin Moore and Colin Gillespie also can knock down threes. So I think the perimeter defense for Xavier is going to be tested big time in this game.
And Xavier's made a quantum leap in defending the three this year. The first half of last year, maybe the first 60% of last year, they were horrible in closing out on shooters, and the opposition was shooting like 40, 41, and the final stretch, they flipped that around. They started to defend the three much better, and all year this year, I mean, they're in the top 25 in the country in three-point defense percentage-wise. And actually, Xavier, although, obviously they're not a great three-point shooting team, they actually have the edge in total three-pointers made on the opposition this year, which is, my theory is if Xavier can break even against the Creightons of this world, the Villanovas of this world, the Marquettes of this world from three-point range, make them more inefficient, but to maybe get the same number of three-point makes, maybe 1 or 2 below those three-point dependent teams, then they're going to be golden because X is going to crush them on the glass. They're going to get to the free throw line a ton, and the Muskies are shooting like 56% or better from 2-point range. I mean, they can really do damage, both in transition and in the post game. And that's my pet theory here. I think Villanova is very good. They're 9-2, as you say. Their only losses are to Ohio State early in the year with a bunch of freshmen. They went up to Columbus and got their lunch handed to them. And they also lost to Baylor on a neutral floor. And Baylor's now a top 10 team. Yeah. They're very good with that funky 1-1-3 defense that Scott Drew plays. And Xavier's run into Baylor a few times in the past. I think they got 1 win against them, but they've lost a couple times. Anyway, they've won 5 in a row. But this Villanova team is a little different in that they have no 5-year seniors for the first time. They have no 4-year seniors. They usually have 2 or 3 grizzled veterans. Like last year, it was Phil Booth and Eric Pascal, the Fordham transfer, who had scored 47% of their points. And before that, they had Mikael Bridges and Josh Hart and Archie Diacono and all those guys. And this year it's a little different. I mean, they had a great recruiting group. Their freshmen are really good, but this may be a little shock to the system, the defense that Xavier brings on Monday if they bring their A game. I mean, Sadiq Bey, underrated, 6'8" sophomore, really good, averaging 15.5. He rebounds the ball. He made that great defensive play on the Kansas point guard on the final possession of that game last Saturday at Wells Fargo when Villanova won the game 56-55 over number 1 rated Kansas. I mean, Bay played great defense. And their best player is the point guard, Colin Gillespie. I mean, he came of age last year. He was sort of handed the reins when Brunson went pro, maybe a year before they expected, because coming off the national championship. Gillespie really, he was point guard last year, and then he went to the Pan American Games, and I thought he was the best player on the Big East All-Stars representing the U.S. in the Pan American Games. I mean, he shoots the 3, he averages 14. He has a 2-to-1 assist-to-turnover ratio. He had the big steal against Kansas, the steal on the bucket that got Villanova back in the game in the final minute. And the other veteran starter is Jermaine Santos, who came of age last year. I think he dropped 29 on Marquette in a huge game in February. And since then, he's been off to the races. This guy made the big buckets, the big 3 to give them the win against Kansas. And he's averaging almost 12 a game, good rebounder. And he's a big-time player. So, but they do start 2 freshmen. Justin Moore is Big East Freshman of the Week, I think 4 times so far. And the 5-star big, 6'9", 235, Jeremiah Robinson Earl, who's averaging 12 points and almost 10 rebounds. He's the real deal. But I think Tyreek and Fremantle can give him some problems. So we will see. They're not as deep as Jay Wright would like. You mentioned Swider. Xavier recruited him hard. It came down to Villanova and X for Cole Swider. And he's a catch-and-shoot guy, which Villanova loves, and he can stroke the 3. And they're bringing Brandon Slater, who's sort of a surprise sophomore, off the bench. But other than that, Brian Antoine, who is another 5-star recruit from North Jersey, he is struggling with he's still recovering from shoulder surgery, and the junior, Damir Cosby Roundtree, is apparently in Jay Wright. I don't know if he's heard the reason, Jay Wright's doghouse. He started a lot last year, and he's coming off the bench, but not playing a whole lot of minutes and not being very effective. So I think Villanova are a little young, they're a little inexperienced, and they have a huge home court advantage at the Pavilion. They hardly ever lose in that building. So, it might be, a bridge too far for Xavier right now to beat them, but I think it's going to be much more competitive than we've seen the last few years. Chris Mack was 0-5 against Villanova in Philadelphia. He called it our annual Philadelphia ass kick. And Steele's team last year was much more competitive. They lost by 10, I think 85-75 to Villanova down at Wells Fargo, but they were right in the game till about 5 minutes left. And, I think a key benchmark, if Xavier can keep Villanova below 70 in the 50s or 60s, I think they win the ball game.
Yeah, and I think defensively they can. And I think a big part of this game is going to be Najee Marshall, who was kind of limited, but he played great on the defensive side of the floor against TCU, holding down Desmond Bain, their best scorer, held him without a field goal, I think, in the first half. And he should be back to full strength, I would assume, coming off of an illness. And I think that's a guy they're going to have a hard time matching up with.
Yeah, I think Najee will come up large, and I don't know who's going to guard him for Villanova, but whoever it is. I mean, Najee's played well against Villanova previously. Actually, Xavier should have beat them 2 out of 3 last year. They lost in Philadelphia early in the year. Then Villanova came to Cintas in February. Xavier drilled them. I mean, they did a number defensively on them. I think Villanova went 9 minutes in the second half without a field goal. Xavier won that by 11 or 12. Then there was the game, the Big East Tournament semifinal at MSG, and Xavier had the ball with a tie game, and Najee Marshall drove the lane, and a really controversial block charge call. As Gillespie, we thought undercut Najee, and Najee should have been at the free throw line with basically no time left, shooting 2 free throws with 1 to win. And it goes to overtime. Najee fouled out on that play, couldn't play in OT, and Villanova won in OT. But I thought, a very questionable call. And I mean, Villanova's going to get the whistle, especially at the Pavilion. That's, and Jay Wright, what a track record. So it would be a great way to start the Big East with a road win at Villanova. It's sort of ironic. I mean, I don't know if Jay Wright has any leverage in the league. I guess he does. He's won 2 national championships. Xavier always seems to play at Villanova early in the first 3 games every year. I mean, I'm sure the scheduling is like a total crapshoot, right? But I think Villanova realizes Jay Wright wants to put a stake in Xavier's heart early, and he's got the schedule breaking his way again. So we'll see.
It's not like there's millions of dollars of TV money involved here, so I'm sure it's on the up and up.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying there's anything nefarious about Jay Wright. He's a charming guy.
He's a hell of a coach.
He plays the media like a Stradivarius. He's obviously a great coach. I mean, he's got the system down. I mean, he has usually he has an 8-man rotation. He has veteran guys. They all, great players, but they all sacrifice for each other. I mean, he convinces them it's not, they're not stars. They're part of the Villanova process, and he convinces them to play that way. And if they don't play that way, they're gone. Like that guard that they brought in last year, the 5-star that Sean Miller wanted at Arizona, Javon Quinterly, whatever his name is. I mean, he and Jay didn't see eye to eye, and he wouldn't play defense. He's gone. I mean, he was a 5-star.
Well, he's built a culture there. I mean, I would kind of compare it a little bit to what Dabo Swinney has done at Clemson, where in the past the program had been really good, but those guys just kind of changed the culture, and there's no me first at either one of those places, and the teams are run more like a family than, an Alabama football factory or a Kentucky one-and-done factory.
Everybody, I think that's a great analogy. Everybody, tells me we are family, and it's all about us and whatever. But Jay Wright lives it. I mean, Villanova is 90-18 in regular season games in 6 seasons of the Big East. That's like they win 83% of their games, and if they've lost 2 Big East games at the Pavilion in 6 years, I'd be shocked. It might be 1. I haven't done the research on it yet, but they hardly ever lose in that building. They are 12-2 overall against a Xavier program that's been the second best in the league for basically for 6 years. I mean, Xavier's beaten them twice in 14 games. Now, last year they should actually be 11-3, but it didn't work out that way.
Yeah, but that's what makes a program like Villanova so special. You can look at all the games that they could have lost, but they don't.
Yeah, they usually win the close ones, but I got a good feeling about this. I mean, as I say, it may be a bridge too far, but they lack. I think their young guys are going to be shocked by the intensity of the Big East, and I'm not downplaying Kansas coming in there. Although I was very underwhelmed by Kansas in terms of their team play, especially their guard play. I mean, they were supposed to be like cock of the walk. Their big guys were scary good, scary strong, but their guards sort of like definitely underwhelmed me. They needed a Kevin Pritchard or somebody like that to settle them down in the backcourt, but he's long gone, man. He was out of there in 1988. So
Yeah, that
forget
don't seem
that.
that
But
long ago to me either, Andy.
yeah, I think he's been a general manager in the NBA between now and then and now, or whatever. I
Yeah.
don't know.
All right. So real quick, we look at the Big East, which is loaded. Who do you think is the favorite going into conference play?
I would say, long live the king, Villanova. They've won, 5 of 6 regular season titles. They've won the Big East tournament the last 3 straight years. They beat everybody like a drum. And I think as I say, they're a little bit young. They maybe not quite as deep at the moment as Jay Wright would like because of Brian Antoine's injury situation. I mean, he may play Monday, drop 15. He's a great player, but so far this year, he came on late in the non-conference, played a little bit, and now he sort of disappeared. I don't know if he's having more injury troubles or what, but I'd say Villanova. Seton Hall is a hot pick, but they have 2 big injuries. Their best big, their second leading scorer and top rebounder, Sandro, whatever his name is, Mama Kalashvili, I think he's from the Ukraine or Romania. Very good player. He's a junior. He's out. Broken hand, and I think he's been out about 3 weeks, so he's got another 4 or 5 weeks. And Miles Powell was in concussion protocol. He didn't play in the Maryland game, and they still beat Maryland, rated number 7 at the Rock in Newark. So Kevin Willard has a lot of depth. He has 2 really good sophomores. The point guard, Anthony Nelson, and then Jaron Rhoden, the 6'6" guy. He's got Quincy McKnight at point guard and Miles Cale. I mean, they're a talented team, but they're a little bit, if they don't have Miles Powell, they probably will by the time they play Xavier on whatever the date is, January 8th. But they really miss the big guy, the big Sandro Mamu. He won't be playing and probably till mid or late January. So that's, my dark horse is Providence. I mean, they had a real struggle during the pre-conference, but they killed Texas in that Big East, Big 12 battle in their last non-conference game. I think they're loaded. Ed Cooley's a great coach. Butler has been the darling. They only have the 1 loss, and that was at Baylor. And they're very, very good. I mean, I think it's going to be a great race. DePaul is 12-1, and they've had some quality wins. They haven't racked up all those wins against Wisconsin, Milwaukee, and UIC, and teams like that. They've played a few of those, but I think they have wins over Texas Tech. They have 3 Big Ten victories. They beat Iowa on the road. They beat Minnesota on the road, and then the other night they beat Northwestern.
Yeah.
So I think there's a chance this year that we may tie a record with 7 Big East NCAA bids. It could go to 8 if the wins and losses break correctly, because right now the Big East has 9 of the top 51 NCAA evaluation tool NET teams, and that's the be all and end all analytically now. It's the NET. The NCAA's proprietary analytical tool. It's not the RPI. It's certainly not the Ken Palm. All those ratings are, sort of window dressing now. It's NET, NET or Boston. And right now the Big East is sitting pretty. They're rated just behind the Big 12. They're the number 3 overall conference. And once you fix those power ratings and you go into league play, league play is like a 50-50 proposition. They're in great shape to get at least 6, I'd say 7, and maybe even 8 of 10 in the NCAA.
Yeah, when I look at it, I think this is a Xavier Villanova Butler thing. Butler really impresses me. They beat Minnesota. They went to Missouri, beat Missouri by double digits. Went to Stanford, beat Ole Miss at Ole Miss. Came back to Butler and blew out Florida. Lost a close game by a point at Butler. Butler's a really good team. And then they handled Purdue last weekend. So I think this is between the triumvirate of Villanova, Xavier, and Butler.
I'll take that. I'd take top 3 in the Big East. I think the winner of the league is going to be like 13-5, maybe 14-2. It's not going to be. There's not going to be a 17-1 or 16-2 or a real dominant team in this league, I don't think. And road victories are going to be very hard to come by.
Yeah.
And Ken Palm has the winning team. He picks Butler in his system at 12-6 to win the league. And the worst record of the league is only 6-12. That's, I think he has St. John's and PC at 6-12. That's a very narrow spread between the 10 teams in the league. And again, road games are really going to be hard to come by. Road victories.
Yeah, well, maybe so we could be like the other teams. Maybe we could like add 4 other teams, include UC, and have 4 crappy teams at the bottom. What do you think, Andy?
No, thank you. That would be even better with a rebuilding UConn team in as number 11. And the leaders of the league have wisely expanded next year's Big East regular season schedule to 20 games. So we maintain, which is pretty unique in a power conference, a true home-and-home, double round robin deal. Everybody plays everybody else home and away.
Well, that's the only way to get a true champion anyway.
In the ACC and the Big Ten and the PAC, you get some teams that have really weak schedules. I mean, they play, the good teams once at home. They don't even go to, they don't have to make the trip to Washington State or to Utah or pick a team that you don't want to play on the road. I don't know.
Yeah.
But the Big East, man, I'll tell you, the coaches, the administrations have done a great job of selling the Big East as the basketball destination for great talent. Everybody else has to screw around with football. And football, let's face it, football's the cash, the huge, giant cash cow with all the more of the media attention, at least for a longer span. The NCAA basketball tournament's the best, 3 weeks of sports, in my opinion, anywhere. But football, for whatever reason, is king. And great basketball players, if you can get them to pay attention to you, they play it. The tournaments at Madison Square Garden, every game is on national television. All 90 Big East games this year will be on some national affiliate, whether it be Fox, FS1, CBS Sports Network, ABC down the line. I mean, you can't beat it if you're into maximizing your exposure, and all the stability in the coaching in the Big East is off the charts. I mean, everybody's back except for St. John's, and a major upgrade. Mike Anderson's done a great job, man. He went out there and got about 4 grad transfers and a couple of good freshmen, even though he didn't get the job till like late April. So St. John's is good.
Yeah, there's not a bad team in it, I don't think. It's a far cry from just getting to see 6 or 7 Xavier games on TV all the time. I do miss Xavier at Oral Roberts, though.
Now, that was always big. The game at Oral Roberts, when Oral himself would show up, and the court was inscribed with "Believe in a miracle." That was his motto, and so you always felt like it was 6-on-5 at Oral Roberts with God or one of the apostles sitting on their bench.
Yeah, and I think people forget that Oral Roberts made a run and were only 1 game shorter to making the Final Four in 1974.
Yeah, they had a great. They had the Akers brothers, and Dick Akers, their dad, was the coach at Oral Roberts, and they had this guy by the name of Sam Potter, who was like a 6'8". He played small forward, great shooter, great scorer. I mean, they had some. It was Mark Akers, who went on to play in the NBA.
Yeah, that was the 82 team, wasn't it? 82, 83?
The Akers played after Xavier got in the league. I mean, there was a great rivalry with Oral Roberts.
Yeah, because I remember the 74 team that made it to the Elite Eight had Sam McCants and Al Boswell, who were both really good. And I think their head coach was Ken Trickey. And they ended up...
Yeah, that name rings a bell. Yep.
Yeah, I can't remember. I think they lost to Louisville in the Elite Eight, but I'm not 100% sure. Yeah, it was Kansas.
Well,
they beat Louisville.
I don't even know. I don't even know what league they're in. I think they're in the Summit League.
Yeah, I don't even know now either. I know every
Yeah.
once in a while they're pretty good, and it makes me remember the old Xavier at Oral Roberts games in the early '80s, and then the '74 team that beat Syracuse and Louisville, and actually lost in overtime to Kansas. So they'd been in the Final Four in 1974. But that's a little useless information for everybody listening.
No, I'm proud of you that you can fish that stuff up. I believe it. I mean, I'm not going to go back and check. I think
Oh yeah,
your
'cause
credibility is beyond reproach.
ooh, I like that. I'm going to put that on a little sound bite. All right, Andy,
Yeah.
it was great having you on the show. You want to come back maybe Tuesday during the day and talk about the game?
If they win, yeah, sure, I'll do it. Win, lose, or draw, it doesn't matter. I mean, it's an 18-game schedule here. If they lose at Villanova, it's not good, but it's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
They got 3 straight home games after that: St. John's, Seton Hall, and Creighton. So the league throws them under the bus by letting them, making them play on the road at Villanova in game 1. Then they throw them a life preserver with 3 straight games at Cintas. So I guess
Yeah, but the thing is this:
it all
if you could
equals
get
out.
that Villanova game and hold serve at home and be sitting at 4-0, that wouldn't be a bad thing.
I hate to look down the line that far, but I've thought of that. That would be a great, even 3-1. I'd take if one of the victories is over Villanova on the road. That's something that Xavier's got to sort of pick out of its craw. Get that game out of the way. A victory at Villanova.
All right, Andy. You want to tell everybody where they can find you on Twitter?
Let me think. MM_Andy Mac. MM_Andy Mac, all lowercase.
All right, so make sure you follow Andy Mack, and remember, you can hear us any place you find podcasts, including iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, Spreaker, Stitcher, Spotify, and over 200 other places. So if you just go to Google and type in The Grueling Truth, you'll find us. So for Andy Macwilliams, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.